Welcome to Fantasy Football Today Dynasty. I am your host, Heath Cummings, and look who's back. It's Jacob Gibbs. It's been a while. It's always good to have you on the show. Why don't you tell everybody what's been going on with Beyond the Box Score?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Heath. Good to be back for sure. Been too long, but it's that time of year. Really excited to get into some dynasty talk. So, Beyond the Box Score got its own YouTube channel. Some have speculated that FFT, finally got sick of our 3 hour long podcasts all the time and kicked us off.
We had bandwidth issues.
That's not true. That's not true. This is something I've been wanting to do for years, and we've got like full backing from production, and that feels really really good. Really good team here putting everything together. So the point of creating like a separate channel for Beyond the Box Score is so that all of the unique, like sicko is the term that we use endearingly for our audience, like all of that unique content is easy to find in one place. So like we just put out a video, Dan and I, where we dug into last year's rookie class, which was really good, really deep, really kind of weird and unique with a lot of different types of profiles with these players. And it was like the top 50 rookie seasons. So reflecting on how the players played for real life football and then how that maybe projects going forward, how encouraging it was for like fantasy football. And so we're talking, I mean, we talked about players also that didn't even crack the top 50.
Right.
And so you're getting deep dives on like Mitchell Evans and Gunnar Helm and Pat Bryant and players like that. And I don't know if you're going to find that in a lot of places, So if you stumble across a video like that and you like that stuff, then it's all consolidated. It's all in one area. You just go to the channel and you can find a lot of that kind of like deep dive stuff, just a whole assortment of videos that you can binge. So it's all organized and in like an easy to find place. So Beyond the Box Score, go ahead and be one of our first subscribers. I think we have like 300 or something. So it's fun to start a project from ground zero. But that's me and Dan Schneier, and we got a bunch of fun content planned for this offseason.
Awesome. I always tell people that there's a real connection between Beyond the Box Score and FFT Dynasty,
Yeah.
because that, especially what you were just talking about, like that's a conversation a lot of dynasty managers are having, especially with a weaker 2026 class, is like, which of these rookies from last year that did almost nothing am I holding on my dynasty roster as opposed to making a second or third or fourth round pick in my rookie draft this year? So everybody go check that out. On today's show, I always say we start with 3 questions for our guest. This show is nothing but questions for our guest. I've got 10 burning questions for Jacob Gibbs. We've got to talk the DJ Moore trade. We've got to talk combine results and much, much more. But let's get started with that DJ Moore trade. I'm sure everybody's already seen on the main feed. I talked to Adam, Dave, and Jamie yesterday about this from a redraft perspective, but we're going to dig a little deeper, get Gibbs' thoughts, and talk about what it means from Dynasty. And I think first and foremost, with DJ Moore at 29 years old very soon, his dynasty value is very, very wrapped up in just how good can he be with Josh Allen.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think there's any, I guess right off the bat, is there any chance that we get a Diggs-like impact from Moore in Buffalo?
It's tough. I've been very high on DJ Moore throughout his career. I think he is a really good player. I don't think he's the type of win in all types of situations receiver that Diggs is. I think you do have to probably cater to his skill set a little bit in terms of getting the ball into his hands. But I do think he can be a really effective playmaker still. But like if you look at like the average separation scores and route win rates and stuff like that from fantasy points data, they chart every route. He's below. He's just a step below both Rome Odunze and Luther Burden while playing within the same system. I think those are 2 really good players. I think both Burden and Odunze are really good separators. So I don't want to judge him too harshly for that. But these numbers have kind of dwindled for Moore as he's gotten later into his career. So it would be a surprise, I think, if he just completely transforms himself and turns into this receiver who can win all the time and maybe sustain like a huge target share or anything like that, because that's kind of what Diggs was. But it's clearly still a win. And I do think there's a small chance of that because we saw early in his career that type of ability with, Joe Brady specifically.
Well, that's one of the things I wanted to talk about, because like what you said I remember having a conversation with Ben Gretsch maybe 5 years ago about DJ Moore, and we actually brought up the comparison to Stefon Diggs because early in DJ Moore's career, he was used in first off, it seemed like he had a different quarterback and a different coordinator every year. Even the 2 years that he was with Brady, his usage was completely different. In 2020, he had an 8 out of 13.2, averaged 18 yards per reception and over 10 yards per target. The very next year, his ADOT shrinks by 3 yards, but he sees almost 10 targets per game, and he's used as more of an underneath guy with a much higher catch rate, much lower yards per reception. I think what you hit on when you're talking about those numbers with him relative to Burden and Rome Odunze is he just was like, not really for the last 2 years, but particularly last year, it did look like there was a drop-off. 28 is not really the age where that generally happens for a wide receiver. So I think it'll be interesting to see like which role Brady assigns him to and then how successful he can be in it compared to like early career versus last year. But I just want to throw some names out of similarly aged players. And you can tell me, because I've got DJ Moore right now at wide receiver 34 in Dynasty. Would you rather have DK Moore or DJ Moore or DK Metcalf?
Moore.
What about DJ Moore or Terry McLaurin?
I see them pretty
a year older.
Yeah, I see them pretty similarly. I think I would go with Moore just because I do think there's this small chance that he turns into something really big, and I don't know if McLaurin's ever going to be like a huge target earner.
No, I think that's right. I've got him in the same range as those guys for redraft purposes, but Moore is ahead of Metcalf for both redraft and for Dynasty. I think probably you, I, and everyone else was more excited about what this trade meant for the opportunities in Chicago than we were for DJ Moore, especially from a Dynasty perspective. Let's start here. Do you have a projection? And I know you don't, I don't think you've actually done this, but can you make a projection for what the target share looks like between Luther Burden, Rome Odunze, and Colston Loveland now that DJ Moore is out of Chicago?
I thought about it a little bit. It's hard to do. So the target shares were super flat last year in Chicago. Odunze had the highest target share, I think, at 17%. But it was a weird year with the rookies being integrated very slowly. First year in the new system. We've seen a player have a very high target share in Ben Johnson's offense before. So I think it's possible that maybe Luther Burden or Loveland could push up into the mid to high 20s. But that's just way different than what we saw last year. Where I landed is 25% Loveland, 23% Burden, 17% Odunze, and that feels high for both Burden and Loveland. It would obviously be dependent on what they do with the rest of their offseason. 25% is just obscenely high for a second-year tight end. But when he got to be like the full-time starter, that's where his target share was. At the end of the year, the final 5 games of the season is when his route rate finally reached 80% for the first time. And from that point on, his lowest target share in a game was 17%. Loveland, this is, and his target share overall was 29%, which is extremely high. If you look at the splits, and it's not a huge sample size, it's about 100 routes. If you look at the splits when it was Loveland and Odunze and Luther Burden on the field together, it was Loveland completely dominating the targets, and Burden and Odunze were more like 15, 16% target share guys. I do feel pretty strongly that Odunze is probably going to have the lowest target share if I had to guess, just based off the way they've used him more as a downfield threat. And I think you mentioned that they use DJ Moore that way too at times. So I think that's going to kind of be his role, is like the sacrificial X receiver kind of, with more design stuff going to Burden and Loveland, if I had to guess.
I think that the difficult thing is, as you said, like early in the season when the rookies weren't playing as much, Rome Odunze was being targeted like an alpha. His first 4 games, 9, 11, 7, 8 targets, and he had a 10 in just a few weeks later. And then when that period of time you referenced for Loveland, when he was getting a lot of those targets, Rome Odunze was hurt and wasn't even available. And so I've got them all 3 very close to 20% right now. But we were asked yesterday on the show to rank those three in Dynasty, in redraft. How would you rank Burden, Loveland, Odunze in Dynasty?
Yeah, I do have Burden just barely ahead of Odunze. And the point is fair. Odunze had a 27% target share at the beginning of the year. The first month before the bye week, it was 27%, which is really, really, really high for a player that is also getting targets down the field so
Right.
much. So it was a 40% air yardage share during that split. And in the games that he played, it was 24%. So he can push higher. I just do wonder if he's going to be used downfield so much, if he's like a good fit with Caleb and what they want to do there, to get a lot of targets. It kind of you don't want to just try to copy paste the Detroit stuff, but like it kind of feels like with Loveland and Burden emerging more and more that he might be in that kind of like Jameson Williams role where he has games where it's like, oh yeah, this guy's really good, but the targets just aren't consistent enough week to week. I think Loveland is. I mean, you know my opinions on Loveland, right? Like
Right.
I still think he's undervalued. I think there's a real chance that he is like the top scoring tight end this next year, and just like leapfrogs even Trey McBride and players like that, and just is like I think we still aren't quite viewing him as the like blue chip, purple chip, like unbelievable type of asset that he is. Like to me, he should be untouchable if he's on your team.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it will come down to probably because the Bears have made had some losses on defense already, is how good that defense is and how run heavy Ben Johnson's allowed to be. And if it's really good and they're averaging 30, 35 rush attempts per game from their two running backs, then it's probably difficult for all three of these guys to be consistently good. And it's maybe difficult for one of them to be as great if the target share is pretty flat. If the defense isn't quite as good and there's more pass attempts, then Loveland could be tight end one. Luther Burden could be a wide receiver one. Right now for Dynasty, I have Loveland at tight end 3, just behind Burden in terms of overall value. Burden's wide receiver 11 for me right now in Dynasty.
Wow.
And then I have Odunze kind of as a low end wide receiver 2. So maybe that's expressing more confidence in Burden over Odunze than I should, but I just think the upside is much higher. On the Bills side of things, the guys who are affected by this, it's not near as positive. Is there any buy low window for Khalil Shakir and Dalton Kincaid? Either one, or are they just dead?
I could see it. So like maybe the defense takes a step back, moving from like Sean McDermott into this new era, and they have to throw more, and we can see more than 1 to 0 pass catchers be sustained in the offense. Like that could happen. I feel like the McDermott has a very specific type of player that he wants for his defense, and so it could be kind of an awkward year where they move into a different type of defense. And I think that both those players are good. I think, we obviously know that Kincaid has had a hard time getting on the field, especially in like Joe Brady's run first offense. And so like if they were playing from behind, that would in theory help him more. If you look at the per route numbers for Dalton Kincaid, they are ridiculous. Like if
Right.
you look at yards per route run and everything, he looks like the best tight end from 2025. I don't
That was kind of a new thing for last year, though, right?
They had been good,
Right.
but yes, last year was the first time where it was like, oh, he's averaging over two yards per out run and all this stuff. But to me, it's just like it's. I do think we have a pretty clear proof of concept on like him being a good receiver, a productive receiver when given
Right.
opportunities, and then we know that Shakir can be a productive player when given opportunities. I don't think that DJ Moore necessarily is going to like take a lot of slot routes from him or anything. I don't think it should affect his role in a meaningful way. So I think you could buy them in theory if you're convicted that they're good players and you think the Bills will pass more, but I'm not really going out of my way to get either.
No, I said this on the show yesterday. I had a dynasty offer sitting on the table that I wanted to just accept yesterday, but it wouldn't have been nice. Somebody'd offered me a round 2 pick for Khalil Shakir, and I wasn't going to take it because I'm not particularly excited about the 2026 class. But now I think I'd probably just go ahead and take that round 2 pick and just throw a dart and hope I can find something that we should have been more excited about. But I can't imagine that offer is legitimately on the table anymore. Let's take our first break. When we come back, we'll have a little bit of a conversation about the combine, then get into some of these free agent quarterbacks.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ, streaming free anywhere you are.
So we are both still relatively early in our rookie research. We've got plenty of time. We're formulating opinions, but specifically with regards to the combine, because we have all kinds of arguments about what matters and what doesn't matter at the combine. What would you say is the single most important result we got for Dynasty Fantasy Football?
So, yeah, I don't pay a whole lot of attention to the combine, and especially early in my process, I want to watch the players first before getting like influenced by that at all. I've caught wind of like Cardinal Tate ran a 4.5 or whatever. And it's that kind of thing where it's like, I don't care at all. Especially for receivers, athleticism is proven to not be like testing athleticism is proven to not be that relevant for fantasy or even real life results. But with Tate, I'd rather just not know, because when I watch him, I'm like, wow, this guy is really athletic and able to move down the field and threaten people vertically. And so like, yeah, that 4.5 turns out to be completely irrelevant. Like, it doesn't show up with the way that he plays. Tight end is a position where I'm pretty curious about the athleticism results. It's proven to be more important there. So I don't know if you can possibly answer this question and not mention Sadiq, right? Like really, really just ridiculous. Never seen anything like this. I'm extremely curious about his film. Basically, I want to know if he can block. Like it seems like people think that he can. So if he can be somebody who's a competent blocker, I know he's a little bit small. And well, that's a ridiculous thing to say about this guy who's so jacked, but like, I know like he's a little bit undersized from in terms of prototypical length at the position and weight. So like, if he can block and be a full-time tight end, then I'm pretty comfortable betting on him, even though his production is a little bit underwhelming. And that's rare for me to be like so convicted about the athleticism testing. But I do think tight end is one of the few instances where that would be the case. And man, this guy sure looks like an outlier.
Yeah, and I think from what I've seen, when you try to decide if he can block, it's probably going to depend on which game you watch. I think a lot of the reports on Sadiq where it looked like early in the year he was a more capable blocker, and perhaps some injuries got in the way of that, and the end of the season may not look quite as good. Do you have yet any hot takes for this 2026 rookie class?
Yeah, I mentioned Tate. So I'm very, very early. I've watched like 8 games of Mekhi Lemon and like 8 games of Tate, and I've watched 4 or 5 2024 games of Jordan Tyson, and that's all that I've got. Oh, I watched all of Mendoza's film too, but that's as far as I've made it so far. But I think Tate might be a better pro receiver than college football receiver, like in terms of production. I really, really enjoyed watching him play. And I know that I think his collegiate production was a little bit underwhelming, playing with Jeremiah Smith there and Emeka Egbuka as well. So lots of target competition. And then also, I guess this is kind of a hot take, and I didn't realize it, but people have been pushing on it a little bit on Twitter, that I've mentioned that I think the quarterback play wasn't very good. I guess that Sayan, I think is his name, was like very accurate, and people have like criticized like that take. And I didn't mean for it to be negative about him. I'm just like, I'm watching these plays a lot, and this quarterback is not getting through his progressions very well at all. He's just kind of locked in on the top guy, on Jeremiah Smith. And so as I've watched this, it's like, this guy's open all the time.
Right.
But it doesn't really matter. But he is getting open, and he also has a good feel for zone. Like, I think I've been happy to see him like run a lot of different types of routes. It's not just the deep stuff to clear space for Jeremiah Smith. Like, he's also winning with consistency on in-breaking routes and like routes that are breaking back towards the ball and stuff. So to me, yeah, he looks similar to Chris Olave, and like the smoothness in and out of his movements for somebody who's also a very good athlete. Like, he's very, very fluid. And so he can threaten defenders in all sorts of ways. There's just like so much gravity that he demands when he's moving. And that's very scary for defensive backs. So if he gets in the right system, like Olave had this year with Kellen Moore, where the guy, the play designer is able to maximize like how threatening he can be with pre-snap movement and everything, and the route designs to create space. Like, I could see this guy coming to the NFL and just like lighting it up, and potentially even being like a wide receiver 1 type of producer which is really hard to project for somebody who didn't ever do it at the college level, but he looks so good.
I kind of want to pull in the earlier conversation. So I mentioned that I've got Luther Burden basically as a borderline top 12 wide receiver. How would you compare at this early stage your evaluation of Tate with Burden? I know they're completely different players.
Yeah, they're really different. So Lemon actually reminds me of Burden in some ways. Mekhi Lemon kind of reminds me of like a Luther Burden, Jalen Knoll, like a better version of Jalen Knoll, or like a stronger, bigger version of Josh Downs. And these are guys who I love, and I think have fantasy friendly games if they're able to get on the field. That's kind of who he reminds me of. And then Tate, I think Lemon and Tate are very, very similar talents and bets for fantasy. Where like I feel like they're basically identical from a viability standpoint in terms of how likely they are to succeed. But people have asked me, like, from my Chiefs perspective, like, if we're going to take a receiver at 9, who would I want? And I would actually lean towards Tate, even though Lemon could be really, really good for fantasy. I really feel good about him if in the right situation with a good quarterback and good play designer, that he could be really, really good and unlock things for the offense. So yeah, I think putting him right up there with Burden makes sense. It's just tough not knowing where he's going to land, whereas Burden is with Ben Johnson right now. So I guess I would lean towards Burden in that regard, but I do feel really, really good about Tate. Good enough to put him up in that range even without knowing where he's going to go.
Ghost of Mr. Nibbles asks if we're going to get a 2-hour podcast today.
Maybe.
I don't think that's a reflection on this show. Probably not. But what we will try to do, if we can get through these 10 questions, and we will, is to get to a couple of your questions from the chat. So if you guys have a specific question for Jacob, go ahead and put those in the chat. We'll mark a couple of them to read at the end of the show. On Keep Trade Cut, we're at question number 6, by the way, so I guess we're just halfway done. On Keep Trade Cut, Malik Willis is QB 25 in Dynasty. Kyler Murray is QB 27, and Tua Tagovailoa is QB 33. Let's start with Willis, and I just want to know, at that cost, are you more of a buy, sell, or hold? QB 25 for Willis, 2 spots ahead of Kyler Murray.
Yeah, I don't know if it really makes sense for him to be ahead of Kyler necessarily. We'll see where they each land. It does sound like Malik is probably more likely to have a team invest in him and like give him a real chance to be a starter for a year or 2 here, whereas we don't know exactly what's going to happen with Kyler. But I think I would tentatively be in on buying on either of those two. I think at those prices, it's a gamble worth making. It's kind of like Justin Fields last year. I wouldn't have wanted to invest on him at much higher than that, but if you could get him for cheap, which is I think these prices are relatively cheap. I thought it was worth doing. And of course, Fields, it didn't work out. He didn't play well at all. But like that, it's just taking a swing on that type of upside. If you can get, especially if you're a team where you need it, if you're like in super flex leagues with best ball formats or anything like that, where it would be a huge boost to have this kind of cheap addition of like week to week upside, I definitely think it's worth taking a shot at this price. Tua, I would just be out on. I'm kind of where the NFL is on Tua.
It seems, and we've talked about this for a couple of months, and Willis's price has risen since then. Murray's has dropped. But looking at the landscape in the NFL, I pretty strongly believe both Malik Willis and Kyler Murray are going to be starting quarterbacks next year. Tua, as you mentioned, is much less certain. But I think when you talk about cost, Willis may have elevated to the point to where 2 seconds in a super flex league won't get it done for him anymore. We always talk about how a late first is generally kind of the bare minimum for a starting quarterback. And I think enough people are now viewing Willis as someone who's definitely going to be a starting quarterback. And there's still some question of that with Murray. I think you hit on a good point. One of the reasons I think he will be a starter this year is because he's available for the minimum, because the Cardinals have already paid him for this year. That same reason that makes it likely that he starts this year also gives him no long-term security, because Malik Willis might get a contract that gives him multiple years, whereas Kyler's just going to be on that minimum prove-it deal. Let's say for next year, Willis is the 2 most popular landing spots right now in terms of reporting. Willis is in Arizona.
Yep.
Kyler is in Minnesota. Which one of those guys would you like better?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Willis. I mean, the idea of Minnesota is intriguing for sure, but I do like the pass catchers in Arizona, and it feels like he would be insulated for at least 1 year there. You don't have the JJ McCarthy thing going on. And the coaching might end up being good in Arizona. We don't know that, but there's a potential, I feel like, that it could be good.
I saw that Geno Smith was also just released this morning by the Raiders. He may be more likely to start next year than Tua. Would you give up one? Like, I know you said you're pretty much out. I think we'd all give a third in Superflex for any guy who might be starting next year.
Sure.
Is Geno more attractive to you than Tua?
Yeah, I think so. It sounds like there's still some teams who like Geno. I feel like Minnesota was one of them. Like, I feel like there's some teams where they might kick the bucket there. It seems pretty unlikely that Tua gets in unless there's like an injury or something that forces him in.
We got a couple of questions in the chat flowing in. Keep those coming. What do you make of the smoke in Denver and New York that they're in the running back market? Does that affect how you value Harvey and Skattebo?
It's scary, yeah. I drafted a 2 or 3 Harvey teams last year, and I'm totally open to trading him where I have him. I think where he's valued right now, there's a decent chance that you make out well if you trade him, is basically where I'm at with Harvey. I think it's like the fact that they were linked to David Montgomery and might be going after some of these top guys is a real reflection of the potential talent issue for Harvey that I think showed up in year 1. So I was very excited to see how he would look against pros, and I just did not feel like, I don't feel like he was ever very comfortable, but also there were moments where he got out in space and he just wasn't winning those enough. He didn't like, I mentioned this on Beyond the Box Score that my comparison for him, my hope for him was that he would be like a combination of like Bucky Irving and Tyjae Spears, where they're just like almost impossible to tackle one-on-one. And I don't think he was close to those guys in terms of winning those one-on-one matchups. So he ended up having a pretty decent fantasy season. He scored touchdowns. He got a lot of receptions. A lot of the like idea behind like being interested in him in that offense with Sean Payton did come out. And so you might still be able to get good value for him. And if he does, I mean, if Kenneth Walker ends up there or something, like it's probably over for him. With Skattebo, I don't know. I really hope it's just smoke. Dan and I were talking about that. Like,
I know how Dan feels. I was wondering if Dan's Dan seems to be just like wishing these reports away.
Yeah. Well, because it feels like they almost have to be a reflection of his health, which would just suck. That would be a bummer because I think he played so well his rookie season. He gave them so many reasons to like feel optimistic in him that I would be very surprised if they brought somebody in, because they've got a lot of other places they could invest, and they have Skattebo and Tyrone Tracy, and that would surprise me. So it feels like it probably is a reflection of his health, which sucks. So yeah, both of these are very scary for me.
And we've talked about the day 3 thing a lot on this show. Like when you have a day 3 running back who looks really good as a rookie, selling has been profitable in the past, especially when they get a new coaching staff who really has no attachment to that running back. The way I kind of look at it is, and you can tell me if this is the way you see it, like the floor on Harvey seems to be considerably higher, partially because of the draft capital, partially because it seems like Denver wants somebody to rush on early downs and Harvey to still maintain that role that's always existed in the Sean Payton offense. But I don't really see the ceiling as high because I don't think Denver wants RJ Harvey to be a feature back. Skattebo seems the exact opposite. Like he might just get completely replaced and just disappear. But he also might be a feature back who has 300 touches in the NFL.
Yeah, I think that's basically right.
So would you right now? I have these 2 guys back to back in Dynasty right now. I won't tell you who I have higher until you answer. But would you rather have Skattebo or Harvey on your Dynasty team today?
I'd rather have Skattebo.
I've got Skattebo 1 spot higher than RJ Harvey, RB 17, RB 18. And I think there's certainly room. If these reports turn out to not be true, either one of those backs could move into the top 12 by like October of next year, just with a great start to the season at their age. And 2 weeks from now, either one of those backs could be outside of the top 30, or at least the top 25 for sure. So that is certainly a risk. Let's take our second break. When we come back, we've got to talk about Ken Walker and Travis Etienne, Sam LaPorta and Kyle Pitts, and more.
This is why we do this every March.
Major slam!
It is a basketball party.
It's more
the unexpected.
We are back. What is the best dynasty landing spot for Ken Walker and Travis Etienne? You can just say it's the same one for both of them, or give different spots for each.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much either one of them. Like I guess I think their skill sets are fairly similar. Etienne is probably better on passing downs than Walker, but I think that these spots are pretty similar for either one. So I put them in order. Jaguars being the best spot. Like if Etienne just goes back there, like I just want the running back attached to Liam Cohen. The Chiefs next, and then the Broncos and the Seahawks, the Saints, the Vikings, the Commanders, and the Cardinals. The Cardinals could end up being kind of a sneaky, lucrative spot if Trey Benson can't ever get on the field. But that's kind of how I see it in terms of the teams that are the most likely to go after a running back, which ones I thought would be the best for fantasy. And so you see the Jaguars and the Seahawks both up there in the top 4 in that list of 8. So like I don't know if moving is necessarily going to be a good thing for either of these guys. Are there any teams that I didn't mention there that you're thinking about?
I think you hit on the most important thing that I would say is that I was really happy when Javonte Williams re-signed with Dallas to stay in the same position, and I would be happier for both Etienne and Walker at this point if they had done the same thing. I think that there is too much risk with them leaving the teams they've been with of possibly finding a worse situation, because I don't think there's very many situations that are definitively better.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a strong opinion on Etienne versus Walker? And I guess you said they're similar skill sets. Does Walker's youth just cause him to be ranked higher, or is this going to come down to where they land and what contracts they get?
I think Walker's a better player. I've been extremely high on Walker since he's been in the league, and I think if he were to go to the Saints or something where he was like pretty much just the lead back, that was the expectation. Like maybe Kamara mixes in on passing downs or something, or Devin Neal or whoever it ends up being. I would feel better about him in that situation where it's like a neutral offense, but a good role. I would feel better about him being able to create on his own within that structure than Etienne. Etienne, I think, played great this year. But we've seen Walker be like one of the most efficient backs when it comes to creating yards after contact and everything since entering the league. He has his own deficiencies. I think if he went to a team that wasn't run blocking well, like that could be a problem. Like if he goes to the Commanders or something and they don't really figure things out better with their line, we don't know exactly what the coaching's going to be like there. That might not be a good spot for him. He might struggle there, for example. But I think in most of these situations, I would feel a little bit better about Walker. I think he's a really, really talented player.
Well, that's kind of the point I think about. We'd have liked it better if they'd have just stayed home, because there is now a possibility where they end up in some sort of like, you can get paid and still be in a committee.
Yeah.
And if it's a team that also doesn't have a great offensive line, that could be a real problem for either one of them. I've got them both right around RB19 right now, but I could see moving them a little bit higher. I would still prefer the younger players we talked about earlier. So I'm not as excited about Walker and Etienne as it seems like everybody, or Walker for sure, that seems like everyone else is. It seems like, though, I'm more excited about Sam LaPorta and Kyle Pitts than everyone else is. Am I making too much of the coordinator changes or play caller changes for Sam LaPorta and Kyle Pitts?
I'm here with you. I feel really good about it for both of them. And I also think that these are just two undervalued players, really. Let me see if I can share my screen here. So I've got a tweet on Pitts that I think people will find pretty interesting. And it's that he is a year younger than Trey McBride.
Right.
And had nearly identical per route production in 2025. So yards per route run, it was 1.72 for Pitts, 1.79 for McBride. And first downs per route run, it was actually 9.5% for Kyle Pitts compared to 9.1% for Trey McBride. I do think first down per route run data is really important, and Pitts looks really strong there. His rate's above Brock Bowers and above even Colston Loveland's barely. And that's with a slightly lower target per route run rate. than McBride. So it was a really encouraging year for Pitts, and now he gets paired up with a coach who really likes to use the position. And the same thing goes for LaPorta, where he actually had, I think, one of the best. He had his best season on a per route basis. He had one of the best seasons of any tight end this year on a per route basis. It just kind of flew under the radar a little bit, but he averaged 2 yards per route run, which is above even Loveland and the guys that have just had the screen there. He just didn't have quite enough routes to qualify. But he's been pushed way down the board because a lot of tight ends have just moved up, I think, is the main reason.
Right.
And maybe there's like a feeling of disappointment with Pitts or something because he got his value was so high at one time. I went back and looked on KTC, and in tight end premium leagues, his KTC value at the peak was 7,600. For reference, it's at 5,200 right now. So 7,600 right now. That's where Justin Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb are. That's like Lamar Jackson.
He was the 101 pick in tight end premium drafts that I did. Yeah.
Jaden Daniels.
Startups.
Like that's where those guys are right now. It's above where Colston Loveland is right now. It's not quite where Trey McBride and Brock Bowers are right now, but it's close. And now he's at 5,200, which is much, much lower. And I don't know if that's actually has anything to do with him. So Dan and I talked about him a lot. We did. And the Drew Petzing thing is something that Dan brought up, and I think it is relevant. So Petzing comes over from Arizona, where Trey McBride had such a big season, and is now calling plays for Detroit. We talked about him on an episode that we put out recently called 10 Busts from 2025, who we still believe in. And I do think he warrants belief. I think so. Here's a good list that I think people just I don't understand why people are down on him. So he's played 42 games. And if you look at tight ends who have put up 500 or more PPR points through an initial 42 games, it's a very short list. It's LaPorta has 520, George Kittle 526, Kellen Winslow Jr. 526, Antonio Gates 558, Jimmy Graham 563, Jordan Reed 573, and Gronk at 671. So that's dating back to 2000. So it's only 7 guys, more than Jeremy Shockey, Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, who had very good starts to their career. And it's not just that he's been very productive. It's that he's, I think, continuing to show more and more signs of getting better. Like I said, the career best 2 yards per out run. He had 2 games this year with 90 or more yards out of just 9 healthy games. So like everything is looking up for him. His route rate was up higher than it's ever been, like pushing up into the 90% range. He had multiple games with a target share above 20%. Like I think it's reasonable to feel pretty bullish, pretty optimistic on him as a player, and this is the cheapest he's ever been just because Fannin and Kraft and all these players are playing well and are moving up above him when really he's done nothing to justify having his value diminished.
I honestly, when I go through the 2026 projections process, and I've done the first run and I've made some adjustments for recent news, and there will be lots of adjustments coming, but what the picture that paints is that nobody should be surprised if Sam LaPorta or Kyle Pitts finishes as the top scoring tight end this year. These 2 play callers, Stefanski and Petzing, 167 and 166, so almost identical, and it makes sense. Petzing came from the Stefanski system. Over the last 3 years, they've averaged 166 plus targets to the tight end position. Now, those teams didn't have a Drake London. So that may impact Pitt's number just a little bit, but I do think that the Falcons choosing to franchise tag him and make sure he stays shows that we're probably not getting a huge shift from. He's still going to value the tight end position like he always has. There's been times where it's been 2 tight ends instead of just 1 for Stefanski or Petzing. But when you have a Sam LaPorta and you're paying $15 million to keep a Kyle Pitts, I'd be really surprised if they're too chopped up in terms of those tight end targets. So I think these guys, and as you mentioned, they're still so young. Kyle Pitts will still be 25 years old. So will Sam LaPorta when this next season begins. And you have an opportunity right now to buy them as if they're 2nd or 3rd tier tight end, probably 3rd, because most people have the 3 rookies in a tier of their own ahead of them. So they're 2 of my favorite buys right now. I guess on the flip side of that, I get some pushback on this side of it, but if we give a boost to Sam LaPorta because of Drew Petzing, do we expect a target downturn for Trey McBride next year?
I'm a little nervous about McBride. It seems silly to say that because he's so freaking good. But I do think, I mean, the circumstances were it was like a perfect storm this past year where the passing volume got so boosted during the Jacoby Brissett stuff, and then he also had injuries to his wide receiver teammates. Um, and so anytime that's the case, like I think it's worth exploring the potential that it might be a good time to sell, especially if you feel really good about one of these other tight ends. Like if you feel like LaPorta, who's younger than McBride, like isn't that much different than McBride, which is how people felt, just a year ago, basically. Like, and before that, like if you're still like on that, then maybe it does make sense to like discount there, like arbitrage down to him and get some additional value. I don't think that I would be doing that kind of a deal for Pitts. I feel more comfortable with LaPorta than Pitts. The only thing that is even keeping me from being like LaPorta is just the best buy in Dynasty
Right.
is the freaking back injuries scare me.
Right.
Like I know that back injuries are hard to manage. And so that scares me a little bit. But outside of that, it's like he seems like such a great profile and such an obvious buy. I think that could make sense with McBride. I would be comfortable doing it with Kraft too, like moving down from McBride to Kraft. I would definitely be comfortable moving down from McBride to Loveland. There's a lot of different ways to do that. I've got a lot of McBride, and that's something that we're considering. Like I would even like I'm really rich at tight end right now, where I've got like Loveland and Fannin and a lot of these
Right.
guys, and it's like on teams where I have McBride and Loveland or McBride and Fannin, it's like maybe you can move McBride for a quarterback or something like Jaden Daniels or somebody if you feel like he's a good buy, or Lamar Jackson or whatever if you feel like he's a good buy, or maybe like my brother and I did a trade where we did McBride for Neighbors and I think a third or something like that. And it's like it's a little risky for sure, but like we don't have Neighbors anywhere, so we decided to do it because we have a lot of McBride.
Right.
I think that it's an interesting time where you could, I mean, just a year ago, Neighbors was like a lot more valuable than McBride in people's minds. And I just feel like the fact that McBride had this perfect storm season, like now gives you an opportunity where you might be able to get a truly like premium asset for him.
Yeah, I actually have Neighbors worth more than McBride right now. So I would absolutely have made that deal. I think I have 3 teams with Trey McBride and Harold Fannin. So we will definitely be trying to see if we can turn Trey McBride into an elite player at a different position. We're ahead of schedule, Jacob. This doesn't happen often. We've got a couple of questions from the chat, and one of them may take longer than the rest. But how important is quarterback? And he did clarify in Superflex, in a Superflex Dynasty tight end premium startup.
Super important, yeah. And Superflex, it's that's basically the basis of your entire draft. Like that's how you're starting it out. For me, is like you really are prioritizing trying to get 1 or 2 good quarterbacks with your first 2 picks. It obviously will depend on where you're drafting and how it goes. But in like auction and salary cap formats, like I'm extremely aggressive in prioritizing quarterback in this format. It's, to me, when I'm drafting dynasty teams, especially in a salary cap format where I have more flexibility with where my resources go, I'm absolute minimum at running back, and near that at receiver, depending on the format. And it's mostly just all dumping into the premium positions.
Right.
So that's where my head's at on it, is like, it's the most important thing. And if you're rich at quarterback, that's a great position to find yourself in. It might take time to piece the team together. It might feel uncomfortable to like not have great running backs to start the season or whatever. But I think in like a battle of attrition, which is what fantasy football is, especially dynasty, it's just so good to have those pieces. That's gold. That's value.
Yeah, and I would even say when you're talking about a startup, they are so important that you should not be waiting to fill out your lineup before you're drafting your 3rd and maybe even your 4th quarterback.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible in a startup, if you were getting them what you think is good value, especially later. It's almost impossible to draft too many quarterbacks, because the cheapest point for acquiring a quarterback is a startup. It's really difficult. I've got we talk about the league that we're in together, the super crazy tight end premium league. And I feel like in a lot of ways, I've almost built a super team. and then my quarterbacks, everything has gone wrong. So I think that team has Jonathan Taylor, Ashton Genty, Jamar Chase, but I also had Tua and Deshaun Watson and Justin Fields and Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, yeah.
At quarterback. And so it's
that's a really funny example because like my team has sucked. We almost made the playoffs in year 2, but year 1 we were terrible. And it's just been a train wreck from the beginning. We made some decisions that were bad. But the main thing is we're so invested in quarterback and tight end, and we've been really stubborn. We're like, Heath is trying to get Dak Prescott from me a lot, and I've got Dak and Brock Purdy and Drake May. And it's like, I think it makes sense, I guess, that I should maybe trade Dak Prescott if my team's not even going to make the playoffs this year. But like, I just feel like that's a really good position to be in, is like, I've got Brock Bowers in this league where tight end is super important. And I'm just like sitting on these guys, and I think I can piece it together.
Well, you made a very good choice in the middle of last year to not trade Dak for Travis Hunter, it sounds like. That was the last question that I realized I skipped over. So speaking particularly as a Travis Hunter dynasty manager, is there anything to do but hold and pray?
So yeah, I've got one team with Travis Hunter, and we have been exploring trades, even though his value is way, way down. It doesn't feel good at all, but I don't think that should preclude you from being willing to make the move. If you're just feeling really nervous that he's just going to be a dead spot on your team and that the value is just going to keep going down, and which is totally realistic if he ends up not playing very much offense this year, because then people just won't know what to do with him. I don't think you have to go out and sell him, because I think that fear and uncertainty and doubt around him is already being baked into his price. His value has gone way down. So if you're comfortable sitting on it, what's more likely to help you? What's more likely to be a breakout in 2027 or 2028? Is it Travis Hunter or like a random 2027 first? I don't know. It might just be Travis.
I don't think you can get a 2027.
I know, but like I don't know if you're actually more likely to get value from the 2027 first in 2027 and 28 than you are from Hunter. Hunter might only be 1 year away. They might have this figured out in 2027. They want him to be worth the value that they gave for him, right? Which involves him playing offense. It might not be this next year, but I think it's possible that he could be on the field and playing a prominent role by 27 or 28 or whatever. And so it's like, if you're waiting for that 27 first, you might as well wait for Hunter, I guess. If you are convinced of his talent, what I would do though, like if I gave some trades where it's like, if you do want to try to just get off of it and recoup, maybe get something now. I don't think you're getting a 27 first. You'd probably have to give Travis Hunter and a 26 second or something like that. And that might not even be enough. And that kind of a deal would make me pretty uncomfortable. But I would be fine flipping it for Jaden Higgins if you want somebody who might help you this year and might see his value go up. They're valued similarly right now. Travis is ahead of him on KTC for what it's worth. And I think those days might be over soon, where it's just Jaden Higgins has moved above him. I would trade him for like Bashal Tootin and a 27 third or something like that. If you want to make a bet that maybe Travis Etienne leaves or something like that, and Tootin's value goes way up. These are just guys who I think, basically it's a list of 2025 rookies who I like, and I think gave us some encouraging signs. And so I would be fine kind of re-rolling here, where it's like, I'll take a shot on them. Maybe they play well, give me something this year. And then if I get like a second or a third attached to it too, then that's enough to kind of justify it in my mind, even though it's clearly taking a huge L on the price that I paid for Hunter. So Tootin in a third would work for me. Terrence Ferguson, if you're in a tight end premium league, Ferguson in a second would work for me. Trey Harris from the Chargers, him in a second would work for me. Kyle Williams from the Patriots. And if you want to listen to me and Dan talk about these guys, we did go in depth on the rookie season and what we saw on the Beyond the Box Score channel. So Kyle Williams in a second would work. Gunnar Helm, if you're in tight end premium league, Gunnar Helm in a second would work. Jalen Nolan a second would work for the Texans. Torrey Horton and like a second and a fourth would work. Or Pat Bryant and a second and a fourth would work. And it sounds so insane to be like, this is what I got for Travis Hunter.
This is the guy I picked fifth last year, and now I'm really happy to get Pat Bryant in a second. And a fourth, we did have a couple more questions. DJ Moore, is DJ Moore in the same tier as Olave, Garrett Wilson, and Zay Flowers?
No. No, I don't think so.
No.
Yeah, I mean, he might prove to be more valuable than Garrett Wilson if Garrett Wilson just continues to have this career from hell where he never gets to play with a good quarterback or good coach.
Well, he's going to have Carson Wentz. It's going to be fine. I have Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, and Zay Flowers back to back to back at wide receiver 17 through 19. I have, as I said earlier, DJ Moore currently at wide receiver 34. So probably a couple of tier breaks in between those groups. I wouldn't be as surprised if you told me that next year DJ Moore finishes in that tier for 2026. But for dynasty purposes, the age makes a big difference there. Yeah. Somebody dropped Anthony Richardson in dynasty. How much fab are you using to pick them up? That's rude. I don't know why you would bring this up.
Anthony Richardson to the Vikings, please, 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 please. I've got so many Anthony Richardson teams where I probably should drop him.
I'd throw a couple bucks out there.
Yeah.
Maybe even 5 if I was really desperate for hope at quarterback. But
I would be pretty aggressive in going after him. I think he's a decent guy to have if you have a deep enough bench.
Okay. I have no tight end in a tight end premium dynasty league. Drafting 104. Should I use it on Sadiq?
I just can't answer this because I'm not deep enough into the rookie rankings.
I don't think even in tight end premium, I want to go higher than 6th for Sadiq. Okay. So I think there will be people in your league who are very excited about either Lemon or Tyson or Tate, whoever's left there at 4. So I would try to see if I could make a deal with the team that has the 6th pick up some future draft capital, or maybe you can pick up an older tight end to pair with Sadiq that can kind of get you through some weeks until we see what Sadiq is. But I think 104 even, maybe if it's like a Jacob Gibbs league and you have to start 2 tight ends and tight ends are double per tight end premium, then you consider it. But that's a little too much for me in a standard tight end premium league. I'll give the explainer on this one because Office Depot, your first attempt at this question was okay. Dynasty Superflex tight end premium. Realistically, what flex can I land with the 108 and the 112? And he's basically saying pairing 108, pairing 112. So you're trading 2 first-round picks, but as we've talked about, people aren't as excited about this part of the draft. Any thoughts on what you would expect to get if you were searching out a flex, trading both the 108 and the 112?
Yeah, I'm thinking about it. KTC says that's fair for Devon Etienne. I think that's absurd. So I don't think that is realistic that you can get that kind of a player. I'm curious, did you have any thoughts on the players that I gave for Travis Hunter? I'm curious how that landed with you being a Travis Hunter manager and not sure what to do. Did that just seem insane to go down to some of those players?
No, I think it's all about risk tolerance and about whether you're willing to just let that first round pick go to 0 in 2 seasons or whether you want to get out. I think if you're wanting to get out, some of those and a couple of them, I thought, I'm not sure you can get that for Travis Hunter. So I was glad you gave a bunch of different names because you're going to have to find the right manager. Some people just aren't going to want to touch him right now.
All right. So Nico Collins, I think I'd be comfortable. I haven't gotten in deep with this class yet. So I don't know for sure that the 108 and 112 are just trash like people seem to think.
Right.
So I'm tentatively saying that I would do this for like Nico Collins, who I really, really like. I think that I would do it for like James Cook or Travion Henderson. That's kind of the line for me. Like I would definitely do it for Tedero McMillan if I could get that.
Are you looking directly at my Superflex trade chart?
No.
So I just want to tell you, I just did a little bit of math and figured it 108 and the 112 as of right now come out to about 23 points on my Superflex trade chart.
Okay.
Here's the players that rank between 24 and 22, and it's remarkable how many of them you said. James Cook, Nico Collins, Tedero McMillan, Jared Goff, Trevion Henderson, Luther Burden.
It's a good trade chart.
So basically all the names that Jacob just came up with in his head were in the same place. I think that's the range. Now, also, if I'm doing a 2-for-1 deal, I expect to get a little bit more value than that. So you might have to, it might actually be the Marvin Harrison Jr., Brian Thomas, Garrett Wilson part of the rankings. for a little bit lower target, but I think you can shoot for some of those upper end guys that Jacob suggested. I'd be happy to trade 108 and 112 for Nico Collins or James Cook. Thrilled, honestly. So I don't know if you'll be able to get that deal done. This is a little dramatic. We did talk about Cam Skattebo. I think you were more Dan and Jacob were trying to wish away the rumors, but does he have any value right now? And if so, what would you look to get for him?
Yeah, I definitely think he has value. He played really well as a rookie. Showed an ability to be an effective runner, even when the offensive line was not blocking well and defenses were totally keying on the run. He also showed playmaking ability as a receiver, and he pass protected better than I think was expected. And they continued to like give him the opportunities to do that as he showed that he could. So what we saw on field was extremely encouraging. And like Heath said, if he's healthy, this could just be a bell cow running back. KGC does have him very high in value. Like they have him above Josh Jacobs, above Jalen Waddle, above like Jared Goff, where it's like, exactly what you're getting,
Yeah, I have him behind those guys.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
If I could get any of those guys for him, I'd be happy to do it. I was thinking like one angle might be Jordan Addison is right in the same range. And it's another guy who his manager might be a little bit concerned about.
Yeah.
Jordan Addison's got some reasons that somebody might let him go. The other one that's right in that same range is Saquon Barkley. If you've got a team that's kind of trying to get younger and you want to get better, I think Saquon Barkley could make some sense.
So this is like a move that you would do right now before free agency to just kind of anticipate the hammer dropping there?
Yeah, because I think that trade doesn't work at all once free agency is over, one way or the other.
Yeah.
It's either that Cam Skattebo is obviously more valuable than Saquon, or that Saquon's obviously more valuable than Cam Skattebo. So it is certainly a little bit of a wager. Let's check and see if we got time for one more question here. I don't even know if there is one more question, but we're just going to look through the chat. Lots of people giving love to Skattebo and lots of people saying there's no chance you could get Luther Burden for the 108 and the 112, which is interesting because I don't see anybody saying you couldn't get Nico. So am I still too low on Luther Burden? I don't see any more questions. I do agree with Office Depot. The best way to upset your league is to hoard quarterbacks. It's just that at some point, Jacob, you have to use those quarterbacks to make the rest of your team better. So you should trade me one of your quarterbacks. Thank you, Jacob Gibbs, very much for coming on FFT Dynasty. Remind people once again, the new place they can find everything you do.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me. Always good to catch up. Really excited to get deeper into these rookie discussions over the next month or so. If you've got a good time, man, I want to talk with you and Matt Waldman again. I think that was such a good show last year. And Waldman has been showing up on my Twitter and like correcting little like fine points about watching film. And I'm like, that's great. Like I want to learn from Matt. I want to talk to him more and more. And I want to compare like what I'm seeing on these guys. He seems to be a super huge Cardinal Tate bull as well. So I'm good to be glad to be aligned with him there. But yeah, Beyond the Box Score, please do check us out. Please do subscribe if you would. That would really go a long way as we get started here. So it's Fantasy Football Today, Beyond the Box Score on YouTube. We've got our own channel. If you go to the live tab, you can find the most recent videos that we've put out. We did rank the 50 to 60-ish best rookie seasons from this past year. We made a video with friend of the program here, Ben Gretsch, and Ryan Heath came on and talked about everything that they learned from the 2025 season. So it's just kind of reflections on how the NFL is shifting for real life, but also like how all of this is affecting fantasy football and how we can, learn from it and be better fantasy football players. I think that was a really good video. And then we also did the 10 busts from 2025 who we still believe in. So we talked about LaPorta today, also dug into like Bucky Irving, gave some historical context on him and Ashton Genty and a lot of these guys who had slightly underwhelming years, and Ladd McConkey and players like that. So definitely relevant stuff for dynasty players. Really appreciate all of y'all giving us a chance, and I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you to Jacob. Thank you to Debo for making everything work. Thank you to everybody who was active in the chat. We will talk to you next Tuesday.